This episode of Pick Up the Six podcast is brought to you by Everyman Jack. If you haven't heard of them, they're a men's grooming company that creates some of the highest performing, best smelling products on the market. They believe it's not just about what you put in your body that matters, but what you put on your body. From their body wash to deodorant to beard oil and more. They're made with naturally derived ingredients and incredibly outdoorsy scents that bring the best of nature to their bottles and bars. I'm a huge fan of all their stuff. The sandalwood scent, probably my favorite of all the things they have. And it's literally in my shower right now. So here's what you do. Head to everymanjack.com today and use our special promo code PUT6, PUT and the number 6 for 25% off on orders of $50 or more. Making small changes to your routine, even in the shower, can have a significant impact. And Everyman Jack makes that easy. Everyman Jack, naturally derived, outdoor inspired. We're also sponsored by Amino Vitals. Amino Vitals' mission is to provide the highest quality of amino acid-based nutritional products to all athletes aspiring to improve their conditioning and performance. The BCAAs, glutamine and arginine, help replenish the body's muscle proteins and jumpstart the recovery process. I've been using Amino Vital since last fall, got introduced to them, and I see a positive impact from their action and recovery products. It helps me just get rid of some of those, aches and pains that come with a tough workout. Hit up amino-vital.com, use the code PUT6 at checkout and save 20%, or just click on their link on the show page and save today. Brian Eddy joins the show today. He's a retired colonel in the United States Air Force and the founder and president of BondFire Ranch, a nonprofit with the mission of warming the hearts of families, especially military and first responders. Brian served for 28 years in the Air Force, including a pair of assignments at Dover Air Force Base, his last assignment as the commander of the Air Force Mortuary Affairs Operations. He's been part of ensuring our fallen heroes received the dignified transfer they deserve. A heavy job, to be sure. Through that, he realized he needed to address mental health in his life. And with that, the BondFire Ranch was born. Let's meet Brian on this episode of Pick Up the Six podcast. Hey guys, Brian Jodis back once again for another episode of Pick Up the Six podcast. Excited to have Brian Eddy on the show because he's got a hell of a name. As you can see, if you're watching on the YouTube channel here, he likely has the best facial hair in the history of the program. I'm racking my brain. I mean, no disrespect to any other guest that has facial hair that's joined us, present company included, as the host. But I mean, it's not every day you get a stash and, the soul patch thing going there. So B, you look good, man.
It's the cowboy in me coming
That's
out.
it.
Right,
yeah. I love it. It suits you well in your role as the founder and president of BondFire Ranch. Before that, again, a shout out to our show sponsors. Big thanks to them. My folks at Amino Vital, much love and appreciation. I'm not even like kind of an accident rocking the t-shirt today. Just got a lift in, put some recovery Amino Vitals in my system. Like, let me just throw the tea on for the show here today. So here we are, but it's all good. Just grateful for them putting a little wind in the sails of this pirate ship here. So we're grateful for that partnership and that sponsorship to help us out a little bit, pay a few bills around these parts. And so go support the products that we're using here, right? Everyman Jack is in my shower every day. No bullshit. Amino Vital going into the system pretty much every day, right? So go help them out, support them. They're helping out the show and they're helping us get connected with guests like this. And so Brian Eddy's here, and man, we're going to talk about a lot. We're going to get to know you, talk about your service in the great United States Air Force, but what's going on BondFire Ranch today? I mean, what's happening in the ranch life?
Hey, ranch life is great. In fact, just this weekend, we hosted 4 airmen out of Maxwell Air Force Base. They're here for a class, and they came up and, spent a little time doing a little bit of ranch work, learning how to do some fencing and taking down old barbed wire. But more importantly, they worked on their resiliency.
Yeah.
The big thing about BondFire Ranch is creating resilient members of our service and their families. And so we got them out. A couple of them never used a saw. A couple of them never used an impact gun. So
kind of Billy Crystal City Slicker style to an extent is a pretty decent reference, right?
Even
I was thinking about that this morning, getting ready for this. I'm like, hello, Norman, hello.
Even more so when we put them in the horses. when we put them up on the horses and you watch them, trying to use a steering wheel with the
Yeah.
reins. It's
Yeah.
like, no,
Dude, I would be lost. I would be lost. All right. So tell me what this place is, right? So our listeners heard service members on the ranch, resiliency. We're going to sort of Tarantino style our conversation than what our listeners are used to, where I talk a lot about you on the front and then your organization on the back. But I was like, I got a feeling, I don't know. Guy's got a hell of a name, hell of a stash. He's going to want to lead with what they're doing at BondFire Ranch. So what is this place, man? Yeah.
So we're in central Alabama, about 30 minutes out of Maxwell Air Force Base and just south of Birmingham, right in between.
Yep.
And my wife's from Birmingham, and I said, you know what? We need to figure out how we get close to her family because her family's done a great job growing up with the kids. And they, I've had 14 different assignments in the Air Force and they have traveled. And I said, you know what? We need to get close to home. So we looked and found this place. We bought about 40 acres with a 2-acre pond on it that's stocked at the moment with catfish that put up a nice fight. But
you can still get them. But you can still go get them. Yeah,
still go get them.
That's good.
But I started thinking before retirement, just through my own experiences, that I needed a place to kind of build resiliency, and especially with the family. Having 14 assignments in 28 years, a lot of traveling with those assignments and a lot of deployments, I knew that I wanted to spend time with the family, and doing it outdoors and doing it with horses is something that really helps me. And so I was like, you know what? It's going to create my resiliency, but I want to share with folks as well to create resiliency in them and their families.
After 28 years in the United States Air Force, and thank you for your service and love that you were off into the wild blue yonder. Why did that resiliency need to be created? I mean, 28-year career in the military, man. You're going to tell us later about the stuff you were tasked with doing, but what was the need there?
So, so many of us in the service, and I say so many of us because I've worked with so many that focus so much time and effort to what it is that we do, that sometimes our family gets lost. Not right, not wrong, well, it is kind of wrong, that they get lost in the mix. Some people do it really well. And I know a lot of those folks that do it very well, that they create that balance. But it's sometimes very difficult. And especially, as your dad knows, and a lot of your guests know, 20 years of wartime service as a country makes it very difficult to just be able to focus and balance family and work. And so I'll tell you, it was at the 26-year point that I finally realized that I had a problem. And we'll get into it a little bit more, but my career field has mortuary in the service. I was a services officer and then force support officer for my time in the service. And part of that is doing mortuary affairs, not only in garrison at base level, but also deployed. And during my time, I had 2 stints at Dover in 2007 to 2009.
Yeah.
And
it's a busy time, brother.
Yep.
It's a busy time, man. Yeah.
During the surge, and then from 19 to 21. And so as we were, starting to draw down, but it wore on me, and it wasn't until, that 26-year point that I was like, hey, something's not right.
Yeah.
Something's not right. And so I actually started to go talk to somebody, because we're 10 feet tall and bulletproof. I think Nick said that in your last podcast too.
He did.
We're younger and we don't want to think about those things. But it wasn't until that time that I realized that, hey, I needed a better relationship with my wife. I needed a better relationship with my kids. And so I started to focus, on resiliency, and that started with talking with somebody.
It's not by accident. You and I have been going back and forth, chatting for a little bit, looking for a date to record this. We record here on 5 June. This will air on the 7th when we drop our shows on Wednesday. June is Mental Health Awareness Month. Not by accident that that you're the first show that we air in the month of June. That's interesting turn of fate there. No coincidence by no means. That assignment, man, to be your last assignment, right? Was it Dover?
My last assignment, yes.
So that, I mean, there is just a ton that it just comes with a lot of weight. You know, I think back to the episode we did with my friend Chris O'Toole, who's in Iraq, having to do mass grave recovery. I mean, anything that's involved in that level of sort of finality of life. And then to have to be such a part of for our warriors, right, that come home that way. I just, you know, one of the most powerful moments of my life is I was just standing in an airport and watched a dignified transfer, right, take place. And just, man, whew, that was a pretty incredible moment.
It stops everybody in their tracks when they see it, you know, at the civilian airport. And some folks have seen it on video, you know, on Facebook or YouTube, and they see that, or they see the actual dignified transfer at Dover, you know, play out on the news, or play out, you know, when the president comes, or the vice president, or any of our senior leaders come, you know, and it makes everybody take pause, right?
Sure, it should.
You know, and really understand what that member did for us. You know, I hope it does.
Yeah.
You know,
and I hope we take pause in knowing that someone's waiting for them on the other side of that too.
Oh,
you
absolutely.
know, you've obviously been very close with military families, which you continue to do today. One of the greatest honors of my life was, you know, that first job I had after leaving TV in 2010, working for Military Families United, and get to spend a lot of time with Gold Star families. How does career, right? Commissioned the Air Force in 92. What's the journey that ultimately leads you to that level of role and responsibility? Were you always in sort of that space? I mean, what's that path look like?
No, not at all. So I graduated from University of South Carolina in 1992. Go Cox,
Go
shameless.
Cox.
I know.
Yeah.
So anyway, I actually started out in the commissary. I was one of the last accessions
on base grocery shopping for our civilian listeners. Spent a many an afternoon in a grocery cart in a commissary stockpiling food for three boys. So great play. No tax in the commissary.
But there is a surcharge.
Sure.
But one of the things I always said, I'm like, man, I didn't join the Air Force to be a Piggly Wiggly manager.
That was a pivotal role, though, my brother.
Nothing against Piggly Wiggly folks, but you know, that's not why I joined the Air Force. I actually had a navigator slot in ROTC, but that was in the time of the cuts of pilots and navs. You know, and so I went there. 10 months later, I find myself in my first move in becoming a services officer. And at the time, it was MWR, Mortuary, or excuse me, Morale, Welfare, and Recreation and Services. Okay. So, you know, we took care of feeding, we took care of bed down, we took care of kids, we took care of golf courses.
All the stuff, right? All the stuff that's happening on a base, right?
All the stuff that takes care of people.
Yeah.
You know, and it was literally cradle to grave, you know, in the organization that we did. And so over time, you know, I just stepped through the services organization. Well, when my time in DC came, was 03, 04 time frame. Unfortunately, we had the Columbia incident with the space shuttle. Yep. And so I found myself at Dover for the first time, working with the Armed Forces Medical Examiner, working with the FBI and doing the recovery on the Columbia. And we were responsible at the time of pushing all the information up to the Chief of Staff of the Air Force and making sure, you know, that information was getting to the president and getting to NASA and all the right people. Well, after that, I went to, I got selected for command at Shaw for the first time, then went to deployed and, you know, did some mortuary stuff downrange in my deployment, and then came back, went to the School of Air Command and Staff where I met my wife. That's a whole nother story for another day.
That's at Maxwell, right?
At Maxwell.
Yep.
And then from there, I got the call saying, yep, you're doing another command tour, but this time at Dover. And so Dover at the time it was a services squadron, and the mortuary was known as the Port Mortuary and was under the services squadron.
Mm.
So in that time was 07, 09, where we had the push in Afghanistan and Iraq. So unfortunately, saw almost 1,700 folks come through during those 2 years. But I'll tell you, the folks that I worked with, which were all services and many civilians, are just amazing.
Consummate professionals. Yeah.
Absolutely amazing folks to be able to do, what they did day in and day out, taking care of the families and taking care of the service member. I couldn't have asked for a better organization to work with.
Brian, that feels to me like there's a lot of areas where the United States of America distinguishes ourselves as it relates to what we do from a military power, and people can see and hear and watch ships and planes and special operators and all that. But the way in which, I got to think, the way in which we handle those that have made the ultimate sacrifice, like in those moments, at least I hope, right, that that's an area that sort of sets us aside.
I think so. Absolutely.
That's good.
Absolutely. Having the opportunity to go back, later, because it changed when I left over. It changed from the Port Mortuary to the Air Force Mortuary Affairs operation, and it became an 06 command. And so it kind of changed the way it worked. It worked directly for the folks in DC versus, working at base level and then up to Air Mobility Command headquarters. So that changed just a bit. And I always kind of crossed my fingers and hoped that I would have the opportunity to go back and serve again, the members and their families and the folks that work there.
And that was that 1921 timeframe when you got to go back and have command of it. Last assignment, 28 years. I'm not going to ask you least favorite place because that's not fair. But of the 28 years, you have a favorite assignment? I mean, somewhere that you went that really just has always kind of stuck with you?
Yeah. So for me, I had 4 island assignments, which is really weird because I was on Guam, Hawaii, the Azores, and Okinawa, Japan. My favorite one was the Azores, Lodges Field in Portugal. It was a bit of Mayberry RFD, very small organization. Was still a wing at that time, just over 1,500 folks. Everybody knew everybody. Everybody knew everybody's kids.
Yeah.
And we were a floating gas station, if you will. We had a couple of other missions during the time, but it was amazing. We had the team that we had there at that time all knew each other, all worked well with each other, and really got stuff done. And I was the deputy mission support group commander at the time. So I had no responsibility, real responsibility. The group commander had the responsibility, and all the squadron commanders had their responsibility. I just got to nudge them in directions that the group commander needed them to go. So, it was fun at the time. And, when I say Mayberry, it was time with family.
Yeah.
But that was one of those, you don't get a lot of pauses in your military career, but that was kind of a pause that we were able to do our work and still take care of the family all at the same time. And it was well balanced.
Interesting. That's probably why it feels that way for you. All right. So you said 20-year career, 26 mark is where you start to, I got to work on some stuff. So what happens in that time frame?
So I just realized in my life, I kind of lost, my swagger, if you will.
Yeah.
That it just didn't feel right.
Yeah.
I wasn't communicating as well as I wanted to. I get a certain, even as you and I talk today, I get a certain quiver in my voice. And it's kind of weird. And it's just, understanding yourself and working on yourself, and working on your relationships with your families and others. I was finding it more difficult to make those connections with folks later in life, than when I was a lieutenant and a captain. And it's one of those things. And as I talked to the mental health professionals, what I realized, it was, the anxiety and the depression, and starting to realize that PTSD had crept its way in over time, and so that's what I finally figured out. And really, once I got back to Dover for the second time, they had created this amazing resiliency program. My predecessor, with the help of the chaplains and mental health professionals and a resiliency lead, actually put together a program. The other thing is they actually started sending folks to see a grief trainer, if you will, a grief counselor, Dr. Alan Wolfeld in Colorado, so that we could better understand how we support the families, of those military members coming to us. And I had the opportunity to attend 2 of his classes, and he started talking about PTSD. And as he was talking about it, I felt myself more and more understanding, in my own mind, what was going on. And so that's how I kind of got the idea for BondFire and creating a resiliency ranch, is to say, hey, we have this great kind of organization, great kind of program to take care of people. How can I continue to do that after I hang up the uniform?
Yeah, I love it. It's, I've been so very fortunate. I don't use that lightly. Blessed, another way to describe it, to talk to guys and gals like you who have sort of this 2.0, right, of life and career, these incredible military careers. And then what do you want to do with the rest of it? And I think about just what that's going to look like. And for you, it's taking some of those lessons learned, and then it's pouring it into BondFire Ranch. Quick pause here, as I would encourage you guys, go find me on LinkedIn. Every day this month, my friends at NGBN, which is a streaming television network for men in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, creating content for men in a place designed for them. Underlying goal is to address mental health and to stop men from doing that ultimate act that we can't reverse, right? Every day this month, we're posting Mental Health Awareness Month videos about men's different journeys. Mine's coming up later in the month. I'm going to talk about some tactics I use to address mental health on a daily basis in my life. It's just God has orchestrated this conversation today. There's no doubt about that. And that's why I'm just kind of thrilled that we're being able to do this today. Listen, PTSD, depression, mental health, just dealing with stuff. It comes in different shapes and sizes. And it can be things like what Brian's talking about, or just maybe other things that have happened in your life that maybe you just haven't addressed. And here's the underlying, and here's the best part, the little secret of all of it. Ain't no shame in any of it.
Nope.
Ain't no shame in any of it. In fact, the empowerment that comes with addressing it, boy, I mean, think about being on the other side of that. And that's where I know that I'm going to talk specifically to men listening. I know sometimes you feel like you might be mired in it, like there's no way out. Believe me, there is. We can overcome anything that's happened to you, except the one thing that you can do that we can't reverse. Don't ever do it, right? Because I promise you, on the other side, even if it's just a little daily victory, well, you can stand on a mountaintop and feel that. So I just felt kind of moved to say that, Brian.
No, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like,
I'm going to say you hit the mark. Is don't be afraid to go talk to somebody.
Right.
It
Please.
takes a lot more courage and strength to be able to stand up and talk to somebody than it is to sit there and continue to bury it in the closet, and hope that that door never opens and everything spills out. No, you have to allow it to spill out, and you have to talk to somebody. And the more you address it, the easier it becomes, because when you put it away and don't address it, it just builds and builds and builds in your mind, and everything, just compounds.
Yep.
But as I talk about it and I understand, the certain triggers with me, then it becomes easier to think about and easier to process and be able to go, oh yeah, that did happen in my life. I now know that I'm okay with that. I continue to see better and better things on the other side of it, so let me continue to share, and so last night I didn't sleep real well because I'm like, how am I going to share this, with Brian and your audience, and so it gave me a little bit of a pause last night and a little bit of anxiety and, going, okay, how am I going to do this today? But I've been doing it the last couple of months as we have folks come in. We had 47 OTS cadets come in 2 months ago, to do some volunteer work here at the ranch. But we spent the afternoon, lunchtime, talking about, mental health and talking about resiliency and how horses can, help work through those things.
Yeah.
Because you have to be present with a
Yeah.
horse.
Yeah.
And kind of go talk to the ranch piece of it. Horses are these amazing creatures. They can hear your heartbeat from 4 feet away.
They are magnificent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're just instinctual. They know what's going on in your head even before you do. And I tell the story, we talked about dignified transfers earlier. And I happened to be on my way to the barn when I was still in Delaware, where I bought my first horse this time around. And I was talking to a general officer who was kind of grilling me about the dignified transfer mission that was upcoming. And I was explaining it to him, and he wasn't happy, with some of the ins and outs, but we do it the same for every single person because they all deserve the same reverence, dignity, honor, and respect. They all deserve the same. So I was a little bit upset, but when I got to Maryland, which is no more than 45 minutes down the road from Dover, I walked into Walker, who is my Tennessee Walker, real original name, but walked into his stall and he gave me a sniff and he walked to the other side of the stall. He's like, I
ain't with you today. I'm not with it today.
No, we're not doing that. And I'd walk over to him. He'd run to the other side of the stall and he's like, we're not doing this. We're not playing this game today. So I said, okay, took myself out, went for a 20-minute walk, tried to clear my head, kind of think about other stuff. And I walked back into the stall and I kind of took a deep breath and let out a sigh. And he walks over to me, gives me another sniff.
I'm like,
he's like, dude,
we're ready. Goosebumps, man. Yeah, that's awesome.
So he's like, we're ready to work. And so I was like, okay, and so that really, I've always loved horses. I mean, I have pictures, from when I'm 3-year-old riding bareback. And I've always had this thing for horses, but that just solidified to me how much a horse can sense and how much a horse needs you to be present.
Yeah.
And if we can learn to be present with the horse, well, then we can also learn how to be present with our spouse, with our children, with our friends. Don't think about all the other stuff going on in this world. You have to think about the person that you're with. Yeah. You need to have that face-to-face conversation. And that's the other thing about BondFire Ranch is we stress having those face-to-face conversations because this thing, Facebook and every other social media, it says that you have 500 friends or you have, 2,000. No, you don't. Yeah. According to a 2016 Oxford study, only about 5 people, and it doesn't matter if you have 150 friends or you have 5,000, only 5 are real friends. Only 13 or 14 will make comment when you post negatively, on social media. But why are you turning to social media if you have a real problem?
Yeah. Yep.
You should be picking up the phone or you should be driving to somebody or asking for somebody to come and help you.
Yeah, that's it's one of my biggest fears with this generation. I'm dad of young kids, 11 and 7. And it's ensuring that the atmosphere of affirmation is created with real physical proximity versus digital affirmation is gone in a fleeting moment. It's a bowl of ice cream, right? Tastes great, man. Right? It brings me, I'm really happy when I'm eating it, but it doesn't bring any joy. It doesn't bring you real fulfillment, right? Doesn't satisfy the hunger and the craving. And it's issue. I mean, dude, I struggle with it. Like I'm sure most of us do. And most of you listening are like, I love posting something cool and a bunch of people react to it. Yeah. That's not real life.
Oh, that's that instant gratification, right? That we've been taught, in and out. And so one of the things I tell folks is, hey, if you're going to have this on the ranch, go put it in the barn.
Right.
I got a charger, go put it on the charger.
Yeah, you'll use it when you need it, but you don't need it right now.
Yeah.
You got to get connected,
I'll take
man.
Pictures for you. I'll post pictures for you. That's what I'm here. Nice. I need you to be focused on yourself or you and your family or you and your unit that you're here with, but don't You don't need that. Put it away.
Hey, so you talked about wanting to build resiliency in yourself and your family, but you're also talking to me about wanting to do that for other people now through the ranch. Is it chronological, right? Do you guys start doing it first and then you're like, this is something we can do to help other members of my community? Or does it all happen at the same time? What is the genesis of this place, right? As a service place, as
Right.
a nonprofit to help other people?
So it really happened. Nobody's ever asked me that question before. Now that I kind of think
It's a
about it,
damn good interviewer. I mean, God, I mean, really, like,
I guess it's kind of chronological, right? Because in Delaware, I started riding horses with my kids.
okay.
My wife is not a horse girl. She's like, I take care of enough heartbeats, yours and the kids. I don't need,
Right.
6 other heartbeats, out the door. And so,
It's also one less thing to grow attached to.
yeah.
That's why my wife's like, we're not getting a dog because it's going to die someday and I can't handle it. I'm like, okay, fair enough.
Stronger person than
I guess.
but it's chronological because I started taking the kids to horseback riding,
Yep.
and my son has fell in love, with horses, and that you don't see that a lot, with the guys, if you will, unless they're doing rodeo, and he just loves to ride, and so he and I going on a 2-hour trail ride together and having amazing conversations,
Yep.
just watching his joy as he learns how to become a better rider, so those things happening in Delaware started, then me talking with Charity and saying, okay, one, we got to get closer to your family. So we got to find ourselves in Alabama. And this is what I want to do. I want to create a place that we can provide resiliency, not only for our family, but for others. And so it just kind of happened over time. And so, I've been retired. It'll be 2 years this October, and you know how terminal leave and all that funky stuff
Mm-hmm.
works. So it'll be 2 years in July. I spent my first year trying to really understand what a nonprofit was. You
Sure.
know, that's a weird beast, and every state is just a little bit different. So I actually said, you know what? I'll learn as much as I can, but I'm going out and hire a lawyer, and an accountant, and make sure that I'm doing all the right things.
It's a good idea.
Um, and so that was a little bit painful, kind of learning those processes and those type things. And then this last year, I started looking for volunteers to come in and kind of set the groundwork of how we're going to lay out the ranch, as well as starting to find some horse volunteers, because I love riding horses, but it's hard to ride all the horses once a week and keep them, patient and calm, cool, and collected, especially when you get groups in here that want to jump
Mm-hmm.
on horses. I don't want, to create Wild Wild West or the
Yeah.
rodeo. And that's the other big thing too, is just making sure that we're prepared for folks to come out. And we've had small groups. Like I said, this last weekend we had 4. We hope to have another 4 coming out this weekend. And we have some Air Force first sergeants coming out on the 13th to kind of talk and learn about resiliency and work on their own. But we had a group of 47, so we're learning how to make sure that we can take care of groups of different sizes and making sure that we have the ability for them to create resiliency while they're here.
All right. So you hear the words nonprofit, guys. Folks can help you out, right? How can they help you? Because I mean, my guess is based on that, those members ideally are coming there at no cost to them to be able to do this.
Yeah, so that's the biggest thing for us is that this is free. We don't want anybody to pay a dime. And so if you go out to bonfireranch.org and look under our sponsors page, there is a link to donor box, PayPal, whatever it is. Or if you go to our sponsors page, you can adopt a horse for a year and help us pay for vet bills and pay for feed and all of those things. But yeah, ultimately, I want to make this free of charge for all military, and that's total force, active duty, guard, reserve, veteran, retirees, and their families. and for first responders as well. We all have, I won't say we all, but some of us, have invisible wounds from our time in the service. And I want to make sure that we take care of those folks that have the invisible wounds and making sure that they have the resiliency to have a better life and have a better family life so that they can continue to have fun, throughout this life, because that's, life is meant to be fun.
Before we go, tell me what they're right. If someone comes there, right? I've got the idea of horseback riding. What else? What other kind of activities are happening?
Yeah. So we have the 2-acre pond I talked about. So, you can hike down to the pond and go fishing. We actually have an Eagle Scout that has decided to do his Eagle project, and he's going to put picnic tables, and we have a bluff that overlooks the pond. And so you can come have a picnic with us. If a squadron from, say, Maxwell Air Force Base or a church organization wants to come out and have, a picnic day, you can bring all the games that you want to bring and just hike around our 40 acres, and just get out and have fun,
Awesome.
And really we can direct and do some things for you, especially with the horses or with fishing. But two, it's also for self-directed opportunities. If you want to just come out and have a picnic and talk as a family, that's what resiliency is all about.
All right. Give them the website. Give us a data dump, right? Where can they go find everything? Listeners, right? Let's get there. Let's throw some dollars their way. Let's have like an amazing mission, right? Amazing mission. I can't wait to get down there and see it. We're going to talk offline. I got an idea. Tell us where they can go to help you guys find all the info.
Sure. So go to BondFireRanch.org.
BondFire.
BOND. And that's, you bring up a great point. Bond. We're creating the bond, and that's how we came up with BondFire. So, and then you can also find us on Facebook, BondFire Ranch. And there is a donate button on there as well. And we're also on Instagram. And so we put out videos. We got yesterday. We had the big puppies, as I call them, because they love to roll in the dirt, especially when it's hot and they're sweaty, and flies are all over them. So we had the big puppies rolling yesterday. One of the things that I'm learning is how to drive horses, and so I've been learning how to pull a carriage or drive a carriage as the horse pulls it. But we have a great video where the carriage is coming by and the whole herd of horses is coming up to meet the rest of the herd meet the carriage horse, which is just amazing. But it's a whole lot of fun. We want you to come out, give us, email us at BondFireRanch at gmail.com. And just let us know what you're looking for. We can build something, or we can do something to make sure that you can create better resiliency in yourself or your family or your organization.
It's BondFire Ranch, BondFire Ranch, RANCH.org. Brian, this has been, man, I knew this was going to be a great conversation. Had a feeling. I didn't know it was going to be this good, though, which is good, man. Grateful for you, brother. Appreciate what you guys are doing.
Hey, thanks, Brian. We appreciate you, and keep doing what you're doing. I looked at a couple of, the podcasts, and I hit subscribe because I want to make sure that I'm understanding all the goodness that you're bringing to us as well.
Would you guys be more like Brian Eddy and go out there, hit subscribe, leave a review? I can't tell you, honestly, Brian, how much it helps us grow this thing that we're doing here. 2.5 years in, right? And yes, I'm grateful for the kind words. It is our privilege and our pleasure to do it because we're trying to share stories, right? We're trying to share stories about service, purpose, and impact. Connect us all something a little bit bigger than ourselves. The news sucks. Come here. We got great stories to share. That's what we do. Awesome. He's Brian Eddy. The name of it is BondFire Ranch. Check him out at BondFireRanch.org. And they are creating resiliency in those they serve. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
He's Brian Eddy. I'm Brian Jodis. That's been this episode of Pick Up the Six Podcast.